It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 30, looking at the players of the 2025 Gold Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Jamaica. Part 2, the selections. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 30 on the players of the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup. This episode is the second part of our coverage on Jamaica's players. The final squad is released, and so we are looking at the selections that Jamaica made. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. And that was based mostly on their participation since the 2023 Gold Cup, although we did consider a couple of factors as well. We also introduced you to the players, or at least the main players, in part 1. Well, we introduced you to all the players, but we only gave career information and some biographical information on the main players there. In part 2, though, here our focus is the final squad. This mediacast is divided into 3 sections. Section 1 is a preliminary information on the team, and we do repeat some of what we said in part 1, but more quickly. We kind of want to create a narrative for the position summaries in section 2, so the information in part 1 or section 1 provides a framework for that. Section 2 is the main part of the mediacast. We're going to review the list that we compiled in part 1, and we'll tell you who made the final squad and the preliminary squad. We're also going to try to predict the starters, and that's why we examine each position to tell the story of who has played in the role since the last Gold Cup. Hopefully that'll tell us who's in the positions, but if not, we look at the lineups of the warm-up games to see if they give any clue as to who will start. All right, and then in section 3 of the mediacast here, we're going to start with a spotlight review of the players. That is a summary, a very quick summary of the players who made the squad and our predicted starters. So we'll also review surprise selections and non-selections there and look at any new players as well as updating on injuries. All right, let us jump right in to section 1, some information on the team. And we begin with the squad itself. Jamaica and other teams were allowed to bring 26 players to this tournament. That seems to be the new standard. And they selected from a preliminary squad of 60 players. So 34 unfortunate players had to be cut from that squad to reach the final squad. Okay, in recent games, we did this in section 1. We looked at the games over the period from the beginning of the 2023 Gold Cup, and we're going to review that here. In part 1, we also looked at the managerial situation in detail, so we're kind of going to combine those. I just ran out of breath there. Not enough breath to finish that sentence. We're going to combine or look at the games and manager. Again, the purpose is setting up a framework to understand the position summaries in part 2. Actually, looking at the formations is going to help us with that as well, but we are going to go faster. So let's go fast. Manager Heimer Hallgrimsson was the manager of Jamaica from 2022. He led them through the Gold Cup in June of 2023, and they played 5 games in that cup and reached the semi-finals there. He then took them through the 2023-24 Nations League group stage. That was 4 games in September and October, and in November, actually, they played one friendly there. That was mostly their A team, but some B team players. In November of 2023, they reached the Nations League finals and successfully passed that stage to play in the semi-final and onward in the March 2024 Nations League. So that's 4 games over November and March. Two friendlies also in March of 2024. That was mostly a recruitment set of friendlies, so not their A team and mostly players who didn't appear on the squad otherwise. June 2024 brought World Cup qualifying. It was a very busy month for Jamaica. Began with 2 games of World Cup qualifying, CONCACAF beginning that campaign there. And they also played in the Copa America in June of 2024. That was 3 games. They didn't pass the group stage. They weren't really expected to. But nevertheless, a managerial change came after that with Heimer Hallgrimsson resigning from the squad. And even before the fall games began, new manager Steve McLaren in place, leading them through the 4 games of Nations League group stage there in September and October, and then 2 games in the quarterfinal in November of 2022. Once again, they played 2 friendlies. That was in February of 2024. Again, mostly recruitment games there, recruitment squads. And part 1 of our mediacast ended with 2 games in March of 2025. Those were Gold Cup qualifying playoffs. And yes, they would have reached the playoffs automatically had they won the Nations League quarterfinals in November, but they didn't, and so had to go through further qualifying process. Okay, let us move on to formations over the period, and we won't go into great detail on this, but we will tell you that their favorite formation over the 29 games was was a 4-4-2 formation, but it was only used in 11 of the 29 games, or 38% of them. Secondarily, they used a 4-2-3-1 and a 3-2-2-2-1 each in 5 of games. So that makes up another 38%. All in all, 7 different formations used. And we'll just summarize that. It was a 3-man back line in 27% of games. So that means a 2-man central defense in 73%, and a 2-man front line in 45% of games. Otherwise, a single forward. So that's about half and half there. Okay, let's take a look at their warm-up games. So we have a few new games to look at here. They played 2 friendlies in May, at the end of May there, both of them actually taking place in England. A lot of their players play in England for both teams, actually. The first one was against Trinidad and Tobago. We're not really interested in the results there, but just the lineups. And then they played Nigeria on May 31st. The second of their friendlies. And then they had their remaining 2 World Cup 2026 qualifying games in round 2 of 3. And this was in June 7th. They played in British Virgin Islands and won just by 1-0 though. And then they played Guatemala, convincing 3-0 home win over Guatemala, who they meet in the cup here. And so they do advance to the next round of World Cup qualifying. But once again, we're not interested in those things, the results too much, but the lineups as far as this mediacast goes. Okay, that brings us to the end of section 1, and we hope that sets you up nicely for section 2 here, as we go through the candidates and tell you who made it and who didn't. So we begin with the manager, and the manager is Steve McLaren, and no problems in the lead up to the tournament. He will lead them through, so we'll consider him as having successfully made the final squad there. Let's go to goalkeepers, and we have 2 definite candidates here. The first one is Andre Blake, and he was selected for the final squad, overcoming injury there. We'll talk about that in section 3. And the other definite candidate, Jamali Waite, also selected for the final squad. The likely candidate, Shaquem Davis, makes up the 3 goalkeepers selected for the final squad. And there were no candidates at the possible level, so it was kind of always looking like these three. One candidate at the possible but unlikely level, Conaya Boyce Clark, didn't even make the preliminary squad, and nor did either of our two players seemingly off the squad, Kamar Foster and Amal Knight. Okay, so those are the candidates. Let's take a look at the position over the period. Andre Blake was the starter in the 2023 Gold Cup, and Jamali Waite proved to the backup keeper when they fielded a partial B team in Game 3. The two of them shared duties in the 2023 Nations League group stage, but Blake played all four games of the final stages in November 2023 and March 2024. However, Blake was injured for the June games, so Jamali Waite played both the June 2024 World Cup qualifiers and the 2024 Copa America. But Blake returned in September and started all the important games. Waite just playing the February 2025 friendlies. So this is what we ended up with after part one. Andre Blake as a definite candidate, and Jamali Waite as the first backup keeper. There. Let's see if our opinion changes when we look at the recent games. Actually, it was Shakan Davis starting both of the May friendlies there, and then Andre Blake playing both of the World Cup qualifiers. So that gives us a little bit of pause as to whether Jamali Waite is the first backup keeper. So we're going to add Shakan Waite as a possible backup keeper there. We still view Andre Blake as a definite starter there. Okay, that's it for goalkeepers. Let's move on to central defence. As we saw in section 1, they use a three-man defence, but only in 28% or about a quarter of their games. Otherwise, it's good to imagine it as a two-man central defence there. The candidates are a definite candidate in Ethan Pinnock. He was selected for the final squad. We had as a likely candidate Deschamps Bernard. He's out of the tournament due to injury. We pretty much knew that in part one, but we will update the injury situation in the in section 3 there. Our second likely candidate, Damien Lowe, was selected for the squad, and so was the third, Richard King. So Lowe and King selected there. We had 4 possible candidates. The first of them, Michael Hector, not selected even for the preliminary squad. And the second one, however, was selected. Mason Holgate selected to the final squad there. Fitzroy Cummings was the third candidate, also not even selected for the preliminary squad. But Kyle Ming, the fourth of our 4 possible candidates, did make it to the final squad. We had 1 candidate at the possible but unlikely level, John Bell, and then 2 candidates at the seemingly off the squad level, Adrian Mariappa and Jamoy Tope. None of those 3 players, Bell, Mariappa, or Tope, made it even to the preliminary squad. And yes, don't confuse John Bell there with Amari Bell, who will be coming up shortly. Okay, so that's it. 5 central defenders named to the final squad. That's Pinnock, Lowe, King, Holgate, and Ming. Let's look at how the situation played out over the recent period. It was Damien Lowe, Deschamps Bernard, and Adrian Mariappa rotating the position in the group stage of the 2023 Gold Cup, each of them playing twice. That would actually prove to be Mariappa's last start for the team. Lowe and Bernard paired for the 2 final stage games there, and they continued onwards, well, on and off throughout the period, joined by Michael Hector at times. However, all 3 of them dropped off near the end. Damien Lowe a bit less than Bernard and Hector. Meanwhile, Ethan Pinnock had also joined the fray after the Gold Cup, but he was on and off as well, especially during the busy summer of 2024 where he was injured. Other players came in for spells. Joel Latibaudiere had been a defensive midfielder in the Gold Cup, but joined central defence as a third man at first, and then entering the rotation of central defenders before returning to defensive midfielders towards the end. Mason Holgate got 2 starts in the fall of 2024, but his bid seemed to end with a red card in the first November 2024 match. And Richard King had popped up a couple of times before becoming a more regular starter towards the end. And he was one of the only regulars to play in the February 2025 friendlies where he started both games. So in short, it was Pinnock and King in both of the March 2025 Gold Cup qualifying games. That's not in short, that's new information. I'm saying in short because it kind of left us where we were at with our starters. A lot of changes over the period, but I guess we have to think of the most recent games as the most likely predictors of starters. So we don't have any definite starters that we're confident in here. But we did have Ethan Pinnock at the end of part 1 as a likely starter, and Damien Lowe and Richard King as possible starters. We considered Mason Holgate, Joel Latibaudiere, Deshaun Bernard, and Michael Hector to be less likely as starters. Well, let's look at the warm-up games and see what happened there, see if that changes our predictions. So it was, Bernard and Hector were not selected, so they're kind of off the list immediately. King and Holgate paired for the 2 May friendlies and also for the first World Cup qualification game. And Holgate continued, so he ended up playing all 4. In the second game, he was not partnered by King, but by Damien Lowe there. And so that does kind of change our prediction. It moves Mason Holgate up in our estimation. We think Ethan Pinnock is still a big part of the picture. We suspect he might have just been being rested for those games. So we're going to continue to say that we don't think there's a definite starter, but we think Ethan Pinnock and Mason Holgate likely starters, possible starters, Damien Lowe and Richard King there. That is our final prediction there, but we're not that confident about it. Let's move on to left backs, begin with the candidates. No one at the definite level here, but we do have Amari Bell at the likely level. He was selected for the squad. And then 2 candidates at the possible level. Greg Lee, I'm surprised he was only possible actually, but he was selected. And Christopher Ainsworth only made the preliminary squad there. We had no players at the possible but unlikely level, but 3 at the seemingly off the squad level. That's Kimar Lawrence, Lamont Rochester, and Ricardo Thomas. Only one of them made the preliminary squad, and that is the last one, Ricardo Thomas. The other 2, Kimar Lawrence, Lamont Rochester, not even getting as far as the preliminary squad. Okay, let us summarize the situation at left back here. We're kind of left with 2 candidates then, Amari Bell and Greg Lee. And over the period, it was Amari Bell playing 4 of the 5 games in the 2023 Gold Cup, with central defender Kimar Lawrence making his last appearance at left back in the other. Amari Bell also played the September games of the 2023 Nations League group stage, but after that, Bell struggled with several injuries throughout the period. But did return when he was fit. He played 4 of the 6 games in the Nations League group stage in the fall of 2024. Yeah, they played 6 games there. That was confusing me a bit, but they were in League B there. Greg Lee played almost all of the games in his absence. No, they weren't in League B. They were in League A. Sorry, it doesn't matter. Greg Lee played almost all of the games when Bell was absent. It was Amari Bell for the first game of the March 2025 Gold Cup playoff matches, but neither he or Lee were called up for the second match, and the versatile Joel Latibaudiere played the second. We don't think that really impacts, or we didn't at the end of part one. So we still had Amari Bell as the likely starter and Greg Lee as the possible starter. We're not confident enough, or we were not confident enough to name a definite starter. But our opinion may change after looking at the warm-up games. Let's see what happened there. It was Amari Bell in both of the May friendlies, as well as the second World Cup qualifier there. But Greg Lee did get one start in the first World Cup qualifier. So how did that change our thinking on the starters? It didn't. Our predictions are still the same. We still consider Amari Bell the likely starter and Greg Lee more of the backup player, but a possible starter as well. Okay, that is the left backs. We move on to the right backs and begin by looking at the candidate. We've got a definite candidate here in Dexter Lembisika. Sorry, let me try that again. Dexter Lembikisa. A bit of spoonerism there for me. No candidate at the likely level. And at the possible level, we have Tavon Gray, actually not selected even for the preliminary squad there. We have 2 possible but unlikely candidates. The first of them, Wes Harding, not selected even for the preliminary squad, but the second, Malia Cowell, did make the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. Finally, a player seemingly off the squad, Javane Brown, didn't make the preliminary squad there. So just one candidate over here on the right. Let's look at how the position played out over the period. Javane Brown and Dexter Lembikisa shared duties in the 2023 Gold Cup, Brown playing 3 of the 5 games there. And Brown also started the first 2 September 2023 Nations League group stage games. However, his last appearance was in November of that year. It was Tavon Gray who played the first October 2023 Nations League games, but really Dexter Lembikisa took over from there. Gray did replace Lembikisa in 3 more games over the rest of the period. But was not the only one. 2 other players replaced him once each time. So at the end of part 1, we predicted, or our thinking was that Dexter Lembikisa was a likely starter. We weren't confident enough to say definite. But the first backup keeper we were uncertain about. We might have named Tavon Gray, but for some reason we didn't. And that was wise of us, because Tavon Gray was not even named to the preliminary squad. So we just have Dexter Lembikisa over here. In the warm-up games, Dexter Lembikisa played 3 of the 4, while the versatile Joel Latibaudiere started the last over at the right wing position. So of course it'll have to be an out of position player playing, but we are going to move Dexter Lembikisa up to the definite level here, just because if he's fit, we're almost certain he'll be the starter. Okay, so there we go, and that is it for the defense. We move on to defensive midfielders. And we start actually with a versatile midfielder Not in this period, actually. In a previous period, we had seen he was versatile. It doesn't matter much. He was seemingly off the squad, Devon Williams, and was not selected even for the preliminary squad. So we can put him out of our mind and move on to defensive midfielders. This is where we meet Joel Latibaudiere. We could have put him in some versatile category, actually. He's coded as a central defender. We've seen him play in other positions already, but we moved him here to defensive midfielder because he played most of his games during the period. And just on that note, if you see any other players who are miscoded to the position we're talking about them in, it's because we've moved them to the position that they played in mostly during the period. So Joel Latibaudiere, a definite candidate here, and he was selected for the final squad. We had a likely candidate in Isaac Hayden, also selected for the squad. Three possible candidates, only the first of them made it to the squad, final squad, and that was Casey Palmer. Josh Ann Anglin was the second, but he didn't even make the preliminary squad there. And the third one, Sule Matala, just making the preliminary squad there. Possible but unlikely candidate, Kevon Lambert, didn't even make the preliminary squad. However, one of our seemingly off the squad players, sorry, I think we must have forgotten to add him to the list last time. It's not seemingly off the squad. It's possible but unlikely. Adrian Reed, we should have had him on the squad there for part one. Did make the preliminary squad, but not selected for the final squad. Actually, both of our seemingly off the squad players, Brandon Cover and Ramon Howell, neither of those made even the preliminary squad. We're going to continue naming candidates, the central midfielders, and then we'll get back to the position summaries and predictions. Central midfielders, there were no definite or likely candidates here, and both of our possible candidates only made the preliminary squad. That's Caroy Anderson and Demario Phillips. However, one of our possible but unlikely candidates was named to the final squad, and that is John Russell. So a bit of a surprise there. The other possible but unlikely, along with the seemingly off the squad Delano McCoy Splat. Both of those candidates, Mario Guthrie and Delano McCoy Splat, not even making the preliminary squad. All right, that is, no, we should look at left and right midfielders here. Well, we only had one left midfielder seemingly off the squad there. That is Deshane Beckford, and yes, he proved to be off the squad when not named to the preliminary squad there. So now we can go back and talk about the entire defensive midfield as one. Okay, I'm just finding my spot here. So let's begin with the 2023 Gold Cup. It was Joel Latibaudiere and Kevon Lambert pairing in the midfield in that cup. Latibaudiere remained a staple in the midfield after that, except for one period where he played central defence. However, his partners in the midfield varied. Kevon Lambert played one more game following October, but was out of the picture after that. Casey Palmer was his main partner. Was his main partner for a while, but he was in and out. Palmer was not selected for the last 4 games there, so he seems, he seemed to be out, but he was selected for the final squad, we now see. Isaac Hayden effectively replaced Palmer towards the end there, and then other names came in briefly, including attacking midfielder Daniel Johnson in November 2023, central defender Damian Lowe in the summer of 2024. He sometimes does play as a defensive midfielder, and Carol Anderson also made an appearance. Though things were a bit haywire actually in the March 2025 Gold Cup playoff matches, with Hayden selected and partnered by two different players. Meanwhile, Lati Baudière returned to central defence for those games. So a bit hard to predict. I mean, if Lati Baudière is not playing in central defence, we would say he's a likely starter. But possible starters are a bit up in the air. At the end of part one, we thought Isaac Hayden and Casey Palmer were the two most possible starters. But let's look and see the warm-up game. So it was actually a 4-3-3 formation in both of the May friendlies, and we saw the same lineup in both games. That was Hayden, Russell, and Palmer. Russell also played both World Cup qualifiers, and he was partnered by central defender Damien Lowe in the first and Isaac Hayden in the second. So what you may notice here is a conspicuous absence of Joel Lati Baudière. Well, he's such an important player for the team that we're going to assume that, like Ethan Pinnock in central defence, maybe he was just rested in preparation for these games. It's a bit baffling that he didn't show up as a starter. Anyway, we're not going to move him from being a likely starter, but we are going to add John Russell, who played all four of those games, as a likely starter, and we'll stick the same with the possible starters, Isaac Hayden and Casey Palmer. Not confident enough there to say anything definite, though. Okay, that's it. That's the defensive midfield, all in one big chunk. Let's move up to the attacking midfield, and we have actually begin with a versatile attacker here, and that is going to be, that was Leon Bailey on our list there. He appears all over the offense, so we thought this was the best place to put him. And Leon Bailey, a definite candidate who was selected for the Gold Cup, unlike the Copa America in 2024, where he seemed to be kind of fighting with the team. Good to have Leon Bailey back. Okay, so his name will pop up. We'll move to left attackers here. And I got to say, it's very fluid up front for Jamaica. So we may see most of the players that we name in various positions. But we have them where we have them, mostly because of where they played over the period. Demarai Gray is coded as a left attacker. He's a definite candidate here, and he was selected for the team, overcoming well, we'll talk about it in section 3. There was a bit of an odd tag on his international player page there. But Demarai Gray was selected. That is great news for Jamaica. Likely candidate Ronaldo Cephas, also selected for the squad. And we have a possible candidate, Alex Marshall, who didn't even make the preliminary squad. And then seemingly off the squad, as expected, Devontae Campbell, also not selected to the preliminary squad. We do have a new candidate here. He's actually coded as a forward, but we're putting him here because it fits the narrative best. I think he started as a left attacker. And that is Ruman Burrell. So since he is new here, we didn't introduce him in part 1. We introduce him here. He's 25 years old and got his first cap in 2025 in these recent games, but he scored. So he has 2 caps and 1 goal for Jamaica. Burrell plays for Burton Albion in England since 2024 and has been with mostly small clubs, except for Middlesbrough in England, there where he was loaned out to a couple of teams there. So Burrell was born in England. Yeah, he didn't play any games actually for Middlesbrough, just loaned out. Born in England was Burrell, and new to the squad, never appearing for the national team before being named to the preliminary squad. So Ruman Burrell, new here. And let's look at the position over the period. So, in summary, overall, Demarai Gray is the main man in the position whenever he's available. That's about 2/3 of the time. So we do have versatile midfielder Leon Bailey playing in the position after the group stage of the 2023 Gold Cup. But sometimes Gray moves around. He went to play as a right forward during this period, and the two sometimes switch flanks over the period as well. The other backup player seems to be Ronaldo Cephas, who deputized 3 times during the period, and that includes the last game in March 2025 when Gray moved to play as a central attacking midfielder. So we're pretty confident over here that Demarai Gray is the starter, and then backup positions often if Gray moves to a different position or is not available, it's possible starters Leon Bailey and Ronaldo Cephas. Actually, that was our thinking after part 1, but we'll see if the warm-up games change that. In the warm-up games, we actually have Ronaldo Cephas and newcomer Rumar Burrell playing in the May friendlies as the left attacker. Cephas in the World Cup qualifier as well in one of the games, and Leon Bailey in the others. Oh no, where's Demarai Gray? Well, in the May games, he was not called up to the squad, perhaps rested there. And I have a little asterisk on this because I did a little research on a couple of the players, but we'll finish here. In the World Cup qualifiers, though, Gray plays as a central attacking midfielder in both of those games. And yes, I confirmed that Gray was rested in the May friendlies. Lati Baudier was on special leave for the May friendlies, as he had been back in February of 2022. So perhaps something going on with his family or something like that. But he was actually there for the 2 World Cup qualifiers. He played as a right back in the second game. He was substituted in the first one. And then for Ethan Pinnock, he wasn't called up for any of the 4 games, yet he is named to the final squad. So we think he was perhaps rested after the EPL season there. Okay, let's get back to our business at hand here, though. So how do the recent games affect our thinking? Well, we think now Demarai Gray is probably likely in this, but he may play in another position. If he does, Ronaldo Cephas then becomes more likely, and we see Leon Bailey as a possible starter there too, but more seems to be used as a backup there. Okay, that is it for left attackers. Let's move to the right side and look at the candidates there. Bobby De Cordova-Reid is a definite candidate. However, he had been an injury concern in part 1. The fact that he was selected for the final squad might tell you something about that injury, but we'll detail it in section 3. So Bobby De Cordova-Reid on the squad. So is our likely candidate, Kahim Dixon. However, our possible candidate, Norman Campbell, also selected for the squad. His name is not burned into my mind because he hasn't been much of a starter, but there he is, probably as a backup player. And beyond that, we only have one player seemingly off the squad. That is Kahim Paris, and he was not named even to the preliminary squad. Okay, let's look at the right side of the field over the period. Bobby De Cordova-Reid played 4 of the 5 2023 Gold Cup games, and as well as the 2023 Nations League group stage games, while Kahim Paris played the other his last appearance for the national team there, Kaheem Paris. Descourt Overeed held the position in the first half of the period, sometimes replaced by versatile midfielder Leon Bailey. Bailey came in for the first 3 games of the fall 2023 Nations League games. But Descourt Overeed was on the field there, just playing in other positions. From the summer of 2024, Descourt Overeed rarely showed up here, but again, he was elsewhere on the field. We saw Demarai Gray kind of shifting positions too. And various players took up the right attacking position, including several players in just one-time or single appearances. Those playing more than once were forward Shamar Nicholson in 2 games of the 2024 Copa America, Norman Campbell in the fall of 2024, and once again versatile midfielder Leon Bailey, who twice switched flanks with Demarai Gray in November 2024 and March 2025. All right, how do we boil that all down? Well, it boils down to us not being confident enough to pick a definite or likely starter, just possible starters in Bobby Descourt Overeed and Leon Bailey. That's what we concluded after part 1. Let's look at the warm-up games, though. Bobby Descourt Overeed struggled with injury up until the end of the season, and so we suspect he was given time to recover during these warm-up games, but he is named to the final squad. Again, we'll talk about that injury more in section 3. So it was actually Kaheem Dixon playing in this position for the first 3 games, the 2 May friendlies and the first World Cup qualifier, and then versatile attacking midfielder Leon Bailey playing in the last one. Does that change our prediction? Well, we just add Kaheem Dixon to possible starters. I mean, it looked like he was covering for Bobby Descourt Overeed, so if Reed comes back, then Dixon would probably be on the bench. But we'll add him to the list of possible starters, Descourt Overeed, Dixon, and Bailey there. Okay, let's move on to the central attacking position. And Jamaica only used a position that or a formation that calls for this position in about a quarter of their games. That formation is usually a 4-2-3-1 formation. But we do have several candidates here, even though they may actually play in other positions when this formation is not used. We have no definite candidate, but a likely candidate in Tyreek McGee. However, he just made the preliminary squad there. We have Omari Hutchinson. I'm sure they would have gotten him if they can, so I'm guessing Omari Hutchinson is still hoping to play for England, so doesn't want to commit to Jamaica at this point. So not selected even for the preliminary squad there. Dwayne Atkinson is the first of our, or is one of our possible but unlikely candidates. He was selected for the squad. For the final squad there. The 2 other possible but unlikely candidates, Daniel Johnson and Ravel Morrison, not selected for the preliminary squad even. However, one of our seemingly off-the-squad players was selected for the preliminary squad at least. That is Corey Burke. But the other 2, Trayvon Reed and Lamar Walker, not selected even for the preliminary squad. So a lot of candidates there, but ultimately only possible but unlikely Dwayne Atkinson making the squad. Let's talk about the position, though. The position was used 7 times over the period, and it was filled by 5 different players. So here's where we see players kind of shifting around the field here. Right attacker Bobby Descourt Overeed, and our candidate on the list who was not selected, Tyreek McGee. Both of them played it twice toward the end of the period. Otherwise, we have versatile attacking midfielder Leon Bailey and forward Shamar Nicholson, each filling it once in that period. Demarai Gray was stationed there in the last game, the 2nd of the March 2025 Gold Cup playoff matches. And that's significant because in the warm-up games, We have a 4-2-3-1 formation in both of them, and in both of them it is Demarai Gray filling the role. So perhaps he's moving from a left attacker to a more central position. I forgot to deal with start. I knew something was missing after the first summary, and that was our starters. Well, I got to say, um, after the part one, we would have said the starter was undefinable. Again, they only used the position about a quarter of the time. I guess if we had to put a name to it, we would have said the most recent name, Demarai Gray, but perhaps I'm just flattering myself there. Uh, anyway, definitely after the two warm-up games here, we do consider Demarai Gray a likely starter in the position, and maybe Jamaica a bit more likely to use the position or to use the 4-2-3-1 formation and this position as well. We'll have to see. All right, that's it for the attacking midfield, and we move on to forwards. We have nothing for secondary strikers. We'll go directly to the main forwards here. We have definite candidate Mikel Antonio, but he was a bit of an injury concern. However, he was selected for the final squad. We're not sure he's fully healthy, though, so we are going to talk about that in section 3. Anyway, Mikel Antonio selected for the squad. Two likely candidates here. The first was Warner Brown. He was selected for the squad. But Shamar Nicholson, kind of always the victim of imports being brought into the team. Shamar Nicholson now pays the price by not being selected for the final squad. Only a preliminary squad candidate here. The possible candidate, Romario Williams, was selected for the final squad. We have 4 possible but unlikely candidates, and 3 of them made the preliminary squad. So we'll just tell you the only one who didn't was Shaniel Thomas. But the other 3, Jamal Lowe, Daniel Green, and Corey Bennett, all 3 of them making the preliminary squad, but none making the final cut there. We also had 5 players on the seemingly off the squad team. Only one of them made the preliminary squad, and that was Trevante Stewart, but the other 4 not selected even for the preliminary squad. Those were Malik Foster, Duan Richards, Fabian Reed, and Kimar Roof. So with all of those candidates, we just have 3 selections: Mikel Antonio, Warner Brown, and Romario Williams. Let's look at the position over the period. And we have Mikel Antonio. Well, he's always selected when he's available, isn't he? But he did play less than half of the games over this period due to absence. He did play in the 2023 Gold Cup. He was partnered there by versatile attacking midfielder Leon Bailey and by left attacker Demarai Gray in 2 games each. Remember, they played 5 games there. Antonio also played in the 2024 Copa America, a single forward in all the games there. But for the many games that he was gone, Shamar Nicholson started about half of the time. Beyond that, an array of players appeared in the position, whether it was a 2-man or a 1-man front line. Among these, we saw right attacker Bobby De Cordova-Reid and Jamal Lowe. Those were the only 2 to appear more than once, actually, but mention should be made of Warner Brown, who started both of the February 2025 friendlies and went on to start the second of the March 2025 Gold Cup playoff matches. So Warner Brown kind of making a bid at the end there as a starter. Let's see what we came up with as our predictions after part 1. Oh no, I think I forgot to write them down, so I just put them on the spot here. Well, I'm going to say Mikel Antonio. We would have thought of him as a definite starter. But again, it depends on his availability. When we talk about his injury, you really see what we're talking about. Otherwise, all we can guess is some of the out of position players, like De Cordova-Reid or Damari Gray. But since Shamar Nicholson did step in for Antonio quite a bit, we probably would have put him as a possible starter there. However, we now know that he wasn't selected for the final squad, so we're going to have to take his name off as fast as we put it on here. Okay, I did that on the fly. I'm quite proud of myself. Let's look at the warm-up games to see if things, if our opinion changes. So we do have actually newcomer Rumar Burrell, who got a goal in his debut match. He played as a single forward in both of the, in just the first of their May friendlies. It was left attacker Ronaldo Sifa starting the second friendly. However, it was Warner Brown who started both World Cup qualifiers. Maybe we should have had him on our list due to his recent participation there. Mikel Antonio is named to the final squad, but he's actually working his way back to fitness from injury. We're going to see in part 3 that he hasn't played any games since returning from his injury. So we think he might not be fit for the first game here. We're assuming he was given time to kind of recover over the period, and that's the reason why he wasn't used in recent games. So we are going to stick with Mikel Antonio as the definite starter, with the provision that based on his fitness. Possible starters, we have to take Shamar Nicholson off the list here, but we should have actually put Warner Brown on the list. But we are going to put Warner Brown and Ronaldo Cephas as the possible starters. Again, we do think that Mikel Antonio won't start the first game at the very least there. So that's our final prediction. Mikel Antonio, if fit, and then possibly Warner Brown or Ronaldo Cephas. All right, that brings us to the end of section 2. We move into section 3, and in section 3 we have our spotlight review. So our spotlight review is a galloping horse ride through the team. Again, for those who listen to section 2, it's a review. For those who listen to or who are joining us for the short version of the mediacast, strap on your belts. We got to do this quickly. So we have manager Steve McLaren as a we're going to say as if he had been selected for the final squad. He'll be leading them through the tournament. Okay, for goalkeepers, we had 2 definite candidates, Andre Blake and Jamali Waite. Both of those were selected for the final squad, as was likely candidate Shakon Davis. So fairly straightforward there. We think Andre Blake will be the definite starter. We did think Jamali Waite was the clear first backup until the recent games where Shakon Davis put in a bid. So now we have both of them kind of contending for the backup role, we think. Those are our predictions. Okay, on to defense and central defenders. We have definite candidate Ethan Peanut selected for the squad. 2 of our likely candidates, Damien Lowe and Richard King, also selected, but Deshaun Bernard out because of injury. We had him as a likely candidate as well. And then we had 4 possible candidates. 2 of them, Mason Holgate and Kyle Ming, reached the final squad. But the other 2 didn't even make the preliminary squad. That is Michael Hector and Fitzroy Cummings. And in this fast review, we're not going to talk about candidates at the possible but unlikely or seemingly off the squad level unless it's significant. We go to left backs here. No definite candidate from part 1, but we did have likely candidate Amari Bell, who was selected, and possible candidate Greg Lee, also selected. The other possible candidate, though, Christopher Ainsworth, was not selected. He only made the preliminary squad. So what we have here is likely starter Amari Bell and possible starters Greg Lee. On to the right back position, we have a definite candidate in Dexter Lembikisa, and that's really all we have. We had possible candidate Tavon Gray, who didn't even make the preliminary squad. So we're going to go with Dexter Limbikisa as as a definite starter. And if he needs to be replaced, it'll be an out of position player, perhaps Greg Lee, coming over there. That's it for defense. For defensive midfielders, we have a definite candidate in Joel Latibaudiere. He was selected for the squad. Likely candidate Isaac Hayden, also selected, but only the first of our three possible candidates, Casey Palmer, was selected. Jashon Anglin, not even selected for the preliminary squad there, but Sule McCalla at least made the preliminary squad, though not the final cut. For starters in the central midfield, generally two players in this position. We think likely starters Joel Latibaudiere and John Russell. Oh no, we forgot to do central midfielders. I'm going to do that and then come back to this. Central midfielders, no definite or likely candidates. Two possible candidates, Caroy Anderson and Demario Phillips, both of those just making the preliminary squad. However, our first possible but unlikely candidate, John Russell, did make the squad. That's why we saw his name up there. And we will go back to it because we have no left or right midfielders of significance to speak of. So here we go, back at our predicted starters. Again, no definite starter, but likely starters, Joel Latibaudiere and John Russell, who featured heavily in the recent May and June games. Also possible starters here, Isaac Hayden and Casey Palmer. Okay, we go to the attacking end of the field. We begin with versatile attacker Leon Bailey. He's going to appear all over the attacking end of the field. He was a definite candidate here and he was selected for the final squad. We have left attackers, a definite candidate in Damari Gray, who was selected, and likely candidate Ronaldo Cephas, also selected for the final squad. However, possible candidate Alex Marshall, not selected even for the preliminary squad. Things are pretty fluid up front for Jamaica, so these players in a way could start in any of the positions we're going to talk about going forward. But anyway, as left attacker, we think likely starter Damari Gray or Ronaldo Cephas, and possible starter Leon Bailey. Moving over to the right attacking side of the field, we had definite candidate Bobby De Cordova-Reid selected for the final squad. Likely candidate Kahim Dixon also making it, and even possible candidate Norman Campbell selected for the final squad there. However, as far as predicting starters go, we're not brave enough to name a definite or even a likely starter. So we're going to name De Cordova-Reid and Dixon as possible starters, along with the versatile Leon Bailey, who sometimes starts over here. Central attackers, well, they didn't use this position much during the period in about a quarter of the games, but they did use this position in both of their World Cup qualifiers there. So perhaps they'll use it in the Cup as well. We had no definite candidate, but a likely candidate in Tyreek McGee. And to our surprise, he was not selected for the final squad, just the preliminary squad there. Jamaica is trying to reel in Omari Hutchinson, the Premier League player, but he hasn't committed to Jamaica here, so he was not selected even for the preliminary squad. We had him as a possible candidate. However, one of our possible but unlikely candidates, one of our three, was selected for the final squad. That was Dwayne Atkinson. In this position, due to recent appearances, we consider Damari Gray a likely starter if they continue to use this position. Okay, for forwards, we have a definite candidate in Antonio Mikel, who is selected for the final squad. Likely candidate Warner Brown, also selected, but the other likely candidate, Shamar Nicholson, not making it this time, just named to the preliminary squad. We have a possible candidate as well, that's Romario Williams. He was selected for the final squad. And that's what we have here. 3 players coded as forwards, but we also have several players willing to step in as forwards. And that made it a bit difficult to predict there. Well, it's easy to predict Mikel Antonio if he's fit. It becomes a bit harder to predict if he's not. Right now, we have Warner Brown and Ronaldo Cephas, both of those really due to recent appearances in the position. Woo! That brings us to the end of our spotlight review, our breathless spotlight review, and we move on to section 3. And we're going to review the surprises in the team that we saw in section 2. So where am I here? Yes, notable non-selections first. We would consider attacking midfielder Tyrick McGee. In this category, we thought him a likely candidate, but he was not selected for the final squad, just the preliminary squad. And I'm a bit sad about Shamar Nicholson, also a likely candidate, but not selected for anything other than the preliminary squad. Just 2 in that category. And it kind of makes sense that we have 2 surprise inclusions. Often it's because these players weren't selected. I'm not sure if that's directly the case here, but our first surprise inclusion is central midfielder John Russell. We had considered him possible but unlikely, even though he was selected in the 2023 Gold Cup. The other surprise is possible but unlikely Dwayne Atkinson, the attacking midfielder there. We have just 1 new player who we introduced in section 2, and that was forward Rumarn Burrell. Yes, no new names other than him. And then we do an update on injuries here. Quite important because at the end of part 1, we were quite concerned about a number of their big players. So let me just deal with them. I have on the YouTube, if you're watching it, basically a grayed out list of what we had at the end of part 1. And let me just go through them one by one. So Andre Blake, he yet another injury is my note here. He had several injuries over the period, but the biggest concern was a knee injury since early May, and in part 1 it was an unknown return date. However, he recovered and played for his club in late May and is no longer listed as injured. He was injured or listed as injured for the first May friendly on May 27th there, but not for the second on May 31st. And indeed, Andre Blake started both World Cup qualifying matches. So we are definitely putting him in the recovered from injury section. Next, we deal with forward Michael Antonio. Well, he suffered a broken leg in early December and was out of action for the rest of the season. The tag did say he was due back on June 1st, though. And good news, he is no longer listed as injured. Michael Antonio was out for the club season and even the late May friendlies that Jamaica played with this injury. For the June World Cup qualifying matches, he was listed simply as not on the squad. So he wasn't listed as injured, but it seems like he wasn't, I'm guessing, wasn't fit to play those June friendlies, having not played any games for the first half of the year. So will fitness be a concern going into the Cup? Well, we think so, because he hasn't played a game for quite a while. So Mikel Antonio named to the squad, but we're going to say still a bit of an injury doubt. We wonder if he'll play the first game or maybe sub into the first couple of games and build up his fitness. We're not sure. Bobby Day Cordova-Reid actually not a dissimilar situation there. He was out since early May with a muscle injury, so a shorter term injury. His tag said expected to return on June 9th. But good news here too, he is no longer listed as injured. He was out for the club season, and even for the late May friendlies, and even for the first of the June World Cup qualifiers, he was listed as injured. But for the second, simply listed as not on the squad. So he is named to the final squad. That's all good. But we think, like Mikel Antonio, he maybe needed a bit of time to build up his fitness, so we're not sure if he's going to be a starter at the beginning either. The only bad news here really is Deschamps Bernard. He was out with a knee injury from mid-February to present. Even in part one, we knew that the tag was that he was expected back on June 30th, so that was well after the tournament, and no change in that prediction. So Deschamps Bernard dropped due to injury. He had been a likely candidate. The last one was Damari Gray, which wasn't an injury, it's just a tag which said special leave. Lost competition. I've seen this a few times and I have no idea what it means, and no idea whether it involves his club play, his international play, or both. But apparently it doesn't mean much as far as this tournament goes, because he is selected for the final squad, and we saw him starting both of the June World Cup qualifiers. So even though it wasn't an injury concern, we'll put him as recovered from injury, because we have no other place that kind of fits the bill there. New injuries for Jamaica, because all of those injuries were known when we did part one. No new injuries, so it's really good news for Jamaica. Four of the five players we had concerns about were named to the final squad, even though a couple of them may be carrying their injuries into the cup here, but no new injuries, so generally positive for Jamaica. Okay, that brings us to the end of our second look at Jamaica there, part two, and we'll just finish with a little message about a bonus podcast or mediacast that we were considering, because all the time before the tournament there's always a few changes, with some player pulled from the final squad and another player kind of inserted into it. So far though, we only have one Canadian player who has been replaced. So if it's just the one, we won't do this mediacast, even though I promised it in a couple of the others. If it's just one or two players, we won't do it. But if it's worth doing, like maybe 5 players or more, we will do a last-minute update on any changes that happen between the time we did the mediacast or part 2 of the mediacast for that team and the start of the tournament. So keep your eye out for that. Again, we'll only do it if there's enough changes to make it worthwhile. Meanwhile, we hope you've enjoyed listening to these deep dives into the Jamaican team, and good luck to Jamaica in the cup. We would like to thank Future Babes for the wonderful music you hear in this podcast. The title is called Alone.